Hello, Year 10. I hope you're all safe and well. As you know, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is our Victorian text for your GCSE study. It's one of my favourite novels, and I thought I'd make some recordings to point out key ideas, context, techniques, and themes linked to the text, so you can annotate along. Feel free to pause at any time so you can make notes, or annotate your own copies of the book. So the novel begins with a preface written by Charles Dickens stating, I have endeavoured in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea which shall not put my readers out of humour with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. Note the repetition of the term ghost and the reference to haunting, which links immediately to the theme of the supernatural and reminds a Victorian audience of a classic ghost story, which was incredibly popular at the time, especially during the winter season. Also, there's a sense of irony, humour, and contrast with the idea of a pleasant haunting. And this implies the story will be a strange mixture of horror and comedy, which is quite intriguing to a reader at the very beginning. This preface also explicitly shows that Dickens wants to speak to the audience with the story, thanks to the important social and moral messages that he wanted to encourage within the audience and the wider Victorian society. So, in Stave 1, note the chapters are named after staves, which is a musical expression, and this sort of playfully links to the title of A Christmas Carol, showing the humour and the self-awareness that Dickens is showing with this book, and that helps, again, connect to the audience, which is really what he wants to do in order to get across the messages. So the first lines of the whole novel are, Marley was dead, to begin with. Note the immediate reference to dead, and so therefore the connection to the supernatural and the Gothic. This sets out quite a shocking idea right from the very beginning of a dead body. Already, though, we're seeing the duality of death and humour that continues throughout this story. We have the subordinate clause, to begin with. This implies that he might not be dead later on, again linking to the idea of the supernatural, the spirits, and kind of an ironic joke. We also get a list of the people who can confirm his death. The clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, the chief mourner. This list emphasises the certainty of his death, and this is further emphasised by the simile as dead as a doornail. Also, note the capitalised change in this line here. This refers to the London Stock Exchange, implying Scrooge is a recognised man of business and finance in the city, showing his importance. The next paragraph brings a change in tone as Dickens talks directly to his audience through devices such as direct address, rhetorical questions, and personal anecdotes. It also creates more irony and more humour in the suggestion of the alternative, more appropriate dead metal work such as a coffin nail, which again is contrasting those ideas of death and humour. Dickens also referenced Shakespeare here with Hamlet. In the story, another ghost appears, and just like Marley, will appear to scold and advise, warning the living about the danger and their actions on earth and how they might be able to atone for their deeds on earth. The focus moves to Scrooge and his life after this. It's revealed he lacks sentiment or care about anything beyond business or money. He doesn't bother to change the sign of the office. He doesn't care what name he's called. It was all the same to him, writes Dickens. And this shows that lack of care he has. Dickens continues to show more about the true nature of his protagonist. A small exclamation of shock in O precedes a list of negative metaphors and emotive adjectives. He is tight-fisted when it comes to the grindstone, a metaphor for work to show how cruelly he treats his employee and how strictly he takes the idea of work and business. He is squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous, old. Consider the emotive power of these verbs with very harsh consonants, and also reference to sin with that covet, showing that he is a man of sin. Victorian England was quite a strong Christian society. Similes continue to show the negative nature of Scrooge, solitary as an oyster, shows the lack of care or empathy he has for those around him. He prefers to remain shut up from interactions with others, like an oyster. However, we could say there's a deeper suggestion of a pearl inside the oyster, of the good man that may be hidden inside that needs to be opened up and changed later in the story. Also, another simile, hard and sharp as flint, suggests the tough, strong exterior that he presents. But again, there's that hope of a spark of light which may be struck later in the story. Also, make sure you note the harsh sibilants. We have sharp, steel, secret, struck, self-contained, solitary. These are all backing up the idea of Scrooge as a harsh, cruel man. Pathetic fallacy is then used quite blatantly in the next paragraphs, as Scrooge is compared to the weather, with Dickens using terms such as frosty and a low temperature to show the cold-hearted nature of Scrooge. He lacks the symbolic warmth of humanity. And so because of Scrooge's cold-hearted cruelty, he is worse than any bad weather. We have here hyperbolic anaphora. Again, remember hyperbole, that exaggeration, and anaphora, that repeated start of sentences or phrases, here with no warmth, no wintry, no wind. And Dickens takes these ideas to the extreme to show the reader that full negative range of what Scrooge is like at the beginning of this story. He really wants us to know, and the audience to know, that Scrooge is a man almost without redemption, apart from those few little references he's dropped in earlier. But still, we have a little bit of humour, a little bit of irony, with phrases like, they often came down handsomely and Scrooge didn't. Dickens even goes so far as to suggest animals dislike Scrooge. The term evil eye is used here. An evil eye is an idea in many cultures and is even mentioned in the Bible. It is a curse revealed to be cast by an evil stare, and many cultures believe that receiving an evil eye can cause bad luck or injury. Then we get the reveal of Scrooge's lack of care, linking back to those opening paragraphs. Note the use here of the word edging. That verb shows Scrooge is on the outside of normal society and on the outside of the lives of others. So I'll stop there for now, and I'll have some more up next week for the next sections of the story.